that I made, do you think the odds are of Ben Shapiro fans watching this show just to type real fast, angry comments about us?
It sounds delightful.
Does that mean that we have succeeded as a show if that happens? I don't know.
Maybe.
Maybe. And I'm just looking at this picture. Jean Bajlan kind of killed it.
Dude.
Good evening, everyone. I'm your host, Jason Miles, and welcome to another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Before we start, if you're new to the channel, please hit subscribe. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you are alerted whenever we go live. We're constantly adding cross streams with other channels and adding new shows. So many shows in the works. This is a busy week for us, as we'll be doing a bunch of pre-records this week to try to get ready for the holiday season, where we try to take a few days off and do family stuff, reset a little bit. That said, MT, it's time for the merch pitch. Can you do the merch pitch?
Sure. Hey, we got merch over here. You can wear This is Revolution t-shirts while telling people you're walking over here.
I'm walking over here.
We got Anglo-pessimism. We got This is Revolution mouse pads. I really like the idea of you letting your coworkers know where you stand with our merch. Pascal's smiling face is on a mug and a mouse pad.
Can we tell them about the new stuff that's coming, the hoodies that are coming for the holiday season?
Hey, we got new hoodies coming. Perfect for your wheat colored Tims. The classics. Those are the classics, all right?
There was a color combination on one of them, and T was like, "What's with the color combination?" I was like, "Hey, Wu-Tang's for the revolutionary children." No, you didn't like that color combo, MT?
I'm not crazy about it.
Really?
We're not killer bees.
No.
Oh man.
No.
It's not Woo Wednesday.
Woo Wednesday. So tomorrow we're actually going to be doing a Red Zone show tomorrow. We're bringing back the Beyond the Red Zone sports show. I'll be joined with my co-host Mac, and also we'll have Dylan Rodriguez coming on to talk left to sports with us tomorrow at 6 p.m. Pacific time. So please tune in. Thank you to all the patrons and YouTube and Twitch subscribers. You guys are the oh so important cogs in the TIR machine. If you'd like to be a part of what we do here, have access to the call-in segment of the show, that's always so much fun, become a patron. You get access to the exclusive champagne room. You can join us for movie nights for as low as $3 a month or $30 for the year. It can all be yours. Now, I must bring in a co-host. my homie, my dog. He is the man of the Mau Mau Hour. He voiced his opinion about Nietzsche and didn't read the YouTube comments where there was some pushback.
Mm.
Yep, that's how I felt when I read the comments. I think I made that same sound. Please welcome the James Brown of political commentary, the Pascal Robert.
Oh, good foot.
Very loud. Pascal, and I'm proud.
It's funny. I have a story about that song, Black and I'm Proud. That Bruce Dickinson told me that the Panthers confronted James Brown when he was writing that song, and they got him to change the lyric that I'm black and I'm proud, because he was going to have I'm black, but I'm proud. They were like, no, that doesn't sound good, James.
You do better, James. Come on.
It's a whole different dance for that song, huh? That's some look at the coon shit right there.
Damn.
That one lyric, Jesus. Yeah, that's a powerful change, because black but I'm proud, I don't think it has the staying power.
No, not at all.
That's on some Bojangles.
He did support Nixon.
Into the very troubling legacy of
He did have a conch.
A hardcore conch. James Brown kept his dark hair and that conch for 85 years.
It's important. Gotta show the kids.
Actually, I don't know how old James Brown was. Pascal, how old was James Brown when he died?
Oh, I don't remember.
Gotta show these rappers who's boss.
He still was the man, though, the father of funk, jamming on the one, transformed black music forever. Wouldn't have contemporary hip hop without James Brown. Cannot diminish the musical contributions of James Brown. I mean, his politics were kind of questionable, but
I mean, he felt, he's kind of what's interesting about that is if you look at his political shift, because he actually was, when Black and I'm Proud comes out, I believe, or even right before that, he's actually supporting the Democratic nominees. It's because he felt let down by the Democrats that he kind of says, well, I think Nixon will be the guy that's going to help our people get there, if you will.
Well, he was a strong believer in racial bootstrapping and racial uplift. This is real black power, the green power. What I can buy is mine.
I mean, that's kind of how he learned, right? Little Richard telling him it's all about pay to play. So he ends up paying to play, buys radio stations, buys pressing plants, had his own recording studio. I think he had multiple pressing plants where he would press 45s for singles and he would press full albums. He owned multiple black radio stations in very strategic regions of the South. I mean, I'm not saying he was right. I get where he was coming from in that era, right? Who had that kind of leverage? Barry Gordy didn't.
That's true.
Hey, he was in line for being the potential black messiah.
What do you think ruined it, Nixon?
Maybe. The con put him down low on the list. Of course, Strom says James Brown was literally my mother's next door neighbor. He didn't have a conch his whole life. He had a natural from 68 to 72.
Is that when he was next door to your mom? I would my Strom hair so kinky.
Oh, Strom got a natural.
That's why Strom got a relaxer.
Strom is a good viewer of the show, man. Don't be dissing Strom.
It was a day.
He's making questionable statements about Strom's mama now.
Right, right. Let me just add this quote.
Hey, Straw Mama, get the Holy Ghost whenever James Brown come on.
Oh my Lord. Let me add this quote from James Brown. I taught them everything they know, but not everything I know. How you gotta do it.
That's a good quote.
Mm-hmm.
That's a damn good quote. Did he tell that to Strong's mama?
Cameron says, I'd be worried if my mom was living with James Brown.
I'd be 5 inches shorter with better hair if James Brown lived next to my mama. I'm just letting you know right now.
Strong Brown. We love you, Strom.
Strom, we love you. If we didn't love you, we wouldn't be making fun of James Brown.
Lacing strong with your mama jokes, man. Y'all.
We haven't even brought in the guest yet. If Ben is cross-streaming this on his channel, all those people turned off.
James Brown, nuclear family. What's going on?
JB just asked, does Strom's mama prefer Bojangles or Popeyes?
Oh, why it gotta be about the chicken? What you trying to say?
We would not ask the chicken preferences if we didn't respect you.
Exactly, Strong. That's why we're talking about the chicken yo mama likes.
He said Bojangles.
Well, moving on. Today we'll be talking with friend of show, friend in real life, co-host of the Give Them a Revolution Left is Best live shows, Ben Burgess. And because of his appearance, and because I had to read some Ben Shapiro to get ready for today's show and watch some, what's the guy's name? Matt Walsh? I was going to say Joe Walsh.
Joe Walsh is the guy from, the show with the criminals.
America's Most Wanted, right?
There we go. Yeah.
Okay, Joe Walsh and Matt Walsh are not the same Walsh.
Not the same Walsh. Different Walsh.
What did you call Matt Walsh? You called him Ugly Hassan Piker?
Yes. I didn't call Matt Walsh Ugly Hassan. Hassan Piker called Matt Walsh Ugly Hassan Piker. His beard is suspiciously thick. I don't trust that man.
My beard is getting suspiciously thick.
Nah, not Matt Walsh thick.
Okay,
Matt Walsh is hiding someone in there. He's hiding someone underage in his beard.
So what about our guest has a beard as well? It's not Matt Walsh thick, is that what you're saying? That his beard hasn't gotten to that level?
No, Matt Walsh is it's like a shoe polish beard.
God damn.
It's not even like he's hiding from somebody. You can't be questioning age of consent laws and not be on a run somewhere. I don't believe it.
I saw that video. Was he literally doing that?
A little bit.
Well, let's check this clip out.
Marriage is a certain thing, which is the context for procreation, for the building of the nuclear family.
Right-wing pundits often claim that there is a war on traditional family values, and it's being incited by the left. Do egalitarian policies chip away at the foundation of America? Is the end game of socialism to destroy society as we know it with a dystopian nightmare of genderless, racially ambiguous, soulless automatons? We'll ask these questions and more.
It's always wonderful and special and new. Sure, other folks think they know what it's all about. Millions of other folks. But when do two people ever really love each other as we do? When were two people ever so sure they were just born to live with each other? We can't fail to find happiness together in this wonderful world of today and tomorrow, in a whole lifetime of wonderful tomorrows. Imagine a home of our own, a home made of smiles and love.
She pretended to crack the eggs and then throw it over her shoulder.
Wait, I was like, what kind of home of love is this? This chick is just throwing eggshells behind her willy-nilly, not even to the garbage can. So mad.
Salmonella all over that kitchen.
Oh my God. Never eat at them people's house.
Mm-mm.
Never ever? Never ever?
Yep.
When asked if that riff was recorded on a Marshall, no, it was recorded on software because if I brought my Marshall here, I would probably melt the walls. So my Marshall is sadly still in the San Francisco Bay Area. Please welcome the man that prompted me to make this intro. I was going to take the whole rest of the year off for intros. And I read both Ben's pieces and I was like, oh no, fuck that. Please welcome my homie, Ben Burgess.
So I was listening to the earlier part and 3 comments. 1, M2San is making a lot of good points tonight. 2, James Brown was 73 when he died. And 3, I remember when we did our live show in LA, you chided me for insulting the audience, and I wasn't even talking about anybody's mom.
Ben, I hope you giggled if you listened to that intro.
I did.
Because I literally took those words. I had did a show with our mutual homegirl, Anna Kasparian, and I made the mistake of reading TYT comments.
Oh.
And that was literally a comment someone left. They said, Anna Kasparian wants a world of genderless, soulless, raceless atomic.
Who says that?
Awesome.
I was reading it with Bertram Cooper. We were in LA, was waiting for Phoenix and his mom to arrive. And I was reading it, and me and Bertram were dying inside of a Denny's by the Burbank airport. We couldn't fucking stop laughing reading the comments. So I was like, okay, this episode is going to be an interesting conversation, and I at least have to make something for Ben Burgess that he will chuckle at.
Definitely.
But Pascal, I know you have a question.
Absolutely, Ben. I really enjoyed your 2 pieces. I read the one in the Daily Beast and the one from Jacobin, and it really this has been a constant kind of trope of the reactionary right, at least all of my adult political life, in terms of like the morally reprobate nature of the left, going back to maybe the new left with the hippies of the 60s, so on and so forth. But something I found interesting, and I'm sure you probably read the piece as well, was the piece in the Atlantic written by David Brooks on the history of the American family. I don't know if you're familiar with the piece, but what I found surprising is that he concedes that the notion of the nuclear family that we have in contemporary America, that is so constantly being defended by the reactionary right, was a complete creation of political economy that comes out of the New Deal that allows for the domestication of family life and the removal from the more kind of like difficulties of urban living of the early 20th century, as well as the agrarian lifestyle of the late 1800s, and how it's actually New Deal policy that creates this. When exactly did Americans lose the capacity to realize that it was political economy that shaped the way in which family was structured in the society, as opposed to these ridiculous questions about culture wars and things of that nature?
Yeah, I mean, I think like a way to even sharpen the point is to say that we wouldn't have been able to have those white picket fences in the 50s because people wouldn't have been able to afford those houses in many cases if not for the sit-down strikes of the 30s, creating this unionized labor force where people who are like auto workers in my home state, for example, could afford to have single income households. Now, of course, I don't think that anybody should have to, if they don't want to. And certainly, if you go back to the 1950s, there's all kinds of, there are all kinds of ways in which conservative values were being imposed by restrictions on what women could do economically and et cetera, and all of that's reactionary and awful. But the thing that always gets me about these guys, the thing that kind of like inspired both of those pieces is how absurd it is to talk about how this is like your ideal, this is how you think that people should live, and just not recognize that there's a reason why people in the 50s were able to live that way. And there's a reason that so few people now are. That there's all this. There are these surveys where people are asked if you're not married but you want to be and you're not. They ask them why not, or if you don't have kids, you don't have as many kids as you want. They ask you why not. And I think what should be very, very unsurprising, but what's totally absent from the way all of these guys talk about this stuff, is that almost all the answers that people give, the overwhelming majority of them, are straightforwardly economic. Not enough paid time off, no paid time off, partner's not financially ready, I'm not financially ready, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely. No, that's something that you really highlight very well, particularly in the piece where you're talking about Ben Shapiro. Mm-hmm. So do you think that the reactionary right is trying to play a game of moral panic in which they're trying to infuse in the consciousness of the American body politic that, listen, these people who support XYZ, transgender dolphins or whatever you have it, you might call it, don't care about family values, they're just decrepit, immoral, grooming sadomasochists who just want your kids to wear Balenciaga, S&M, clothing, and just want to have drag parties at your local kindergarten, just to basically play the game of fear in the minds of the American consciousness and separate from people realizing the left as we know it is about the way in which capitalism is denying people from actually acquiring the things they need to be happy, i.e. be able to even produce families.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, elsewhere in the Jason's intro, that clip that he has of Matt Walsh on the Joe Rogan Experience, there's a different point in that episode where Walsh makes the claim, and they go to what you said about moral panic, that millions of kids are prescribed puberty blockers every year, and then Joe, to his credit, hears that doesn't quite sound right to him. He asks his producer Jamie to look it up, and Jamie Googles it, and it turns out that the number is less than 5,000 over the course of the last 5 years. So that's in a nation of close to 300 million people. I think about that. That's less than 1,000 on average per year. And so the fact that these people want to focus on that so relentlessly tells you something, right? I mean, this is something I pointed out on election night. I went on the stream to argue with some right wingers, and one of the things I pointed out to them is the Republicans openly said during the election, Kevin McCarthy put out this document called Commitment to America, where he said that they were going to, if they won the majority, were going to reform Social Security by cutting it, essentially. And you think about the juxtaposition between those two things. I mean, to what you said about moral panics, that on the one hand, they want everybody to be up in arms about prescriptions that less than 1,000 kids in the entire country are getting in any given year. Whereas what they certainly don't want to focus on everybody's attention on is their own plans to steal the Social Security money that every single person in the country, at least every citizen, will eventually be getting. And I think in particular, I mean, just to quickly answer the other part of your question. So in the part that Jason was clipping, Joe and Matt Walsh are arguing about gay marriage, and which of course was also the context of the Ben Shapiro article I wrote for Jacobin. It's a shame because these days Jacobin is very conscious of search result optimization. So the titles have to be very straightforwardly, boringly descriptive. What I wanted to call it was Ben Shapiro and the Visitors from Mars, because I quote him in there in Shapiro's conversation with Matt Walsh. Shapiro says even visitors from Mars would be against gay marriage because they would see
because marriage is about procreation.
Yeah, exactly. But the way that all this is connected for me is Shapiro and his ilk sometimes point at something real, which is people getting married at lower rates, people having, waiting till for longer to have kids or having fewer kids. Those are real things. And in some cases, it's just not everybody is built the same. Not everybody wants the same things out of life, and that's fine. That's legitimate. That's freedom. But there is a social problem that leads to that. It's just not gay people getting married. It's not that no straight person decides not to get married. It's like gay people being allowed in the club somehow deviates it, and they just don't see the point anymore. That's not a thing that I think has literally ever happened to anybody.
Now, I watched that whole not the whole interview. I think it's 3 hours long, but I watched the clip. It was 15 minutes. And in the clip, Joe Rogan actually does, in my opinion, some interesting pushback, because I think Joe Rogan doesn't like the framing. And what I found interesting about the way these guys talk is there's always a war on personal freedom. And that war comes from the left and government, right? These are the small government people. These are the government is the problem people. And how can government be the problem? Well, the government will enforce these rights on these people that you don't have to like. And what I found interesting was Rogan's framing of rights and freedom. Rogan, for all intents and purposes, we don't really know. I think he's more almost apolitical than anything, maybe contrarian at best. Didn't see the problem with denying gay people the right to get married. And what was interesting about Matt Walsh, and I
or the originally other way around, he didn't see the problem with letting them get married. Letting them because he asked the kinds of questions that I think, frankly, any normal person should ask when confronted with that. How does that hurt anybody?
He's like, what he was screwing, what Matt Walsh seemed to be getting real stuck on, he comes out, says marriage is this sacred institution that's all about the procreation of life. And if these people get married, then life can't be procreated. And that's where the Martian thing comes from, right? And Rogan's like, well, what if there's just straight couples that don't want kids? He had no answer for that.
No, he did, because he said, well, I think everybody should be, I would hope that any couple would be open life, but that's not the question. The question is, if two straight people love each other and they want to, they want to formalize that, they want to, they want to have, they it's meaningful to them. They want the legal prints. They can visit each other in the hospital and all that stuff. But they don't want kids. Should they be allowed to? And Walsh wasn't quite willing to say they shouldn't be allowed to. But if the answer to that isn't no, then clearly just, even ignoring the fact that Matt Walsh is talking as if he doesn't know that adoption and in vitro fertilization are things, but whatever, put all that aside. It's, if he thinks that it's okay for people who don't want kids, or people who are infertile, to get married, then that can't possibly be what's wrong with gay marriage. And again, I mean, the thing I just, it's in a sense, it's a really simple point, but what I keep going back to here is I wouldn't worry about like not enough human beings wanting to have kids that where that like the human race is going to continue to exist, right? That's a pretty widespread human desire. Not everybody, but it's pretty widespread. But it is true that there are fewer, that like people statistically will wait for longer to have kids, have fewer kids, etc. But like none of the things that they want to blame it on have anything to do with it. Feminism didn't do that. Letting gay people get married didn't do that. The tiny number of kids
they avoid the economic question
exactly. Because that's like this is not rocket science. It should be pretty commonsensical, as Pascal suggested earlier, that of course, right? I mean, people worry that they're not financially secure enough to do that, to get married in the first place, to have kids, any of that stuff. And if you really wanted to enable that, and like frankly, look, I don't like obviously my vision of how all this should work is not like not Walsh or Ben Shapiro, because I'm I'm on the Rogan side of the Rogan Walsh argument. I don't think it affects you how many else live their life. But I do think that a decent society would even give people the option of staying home with the kids if they wanted to. That's totally legitimate. I mean, I don't think there should be any gender-based pressure on anybody in particular to do it. But if one of the parents wants to stay home with the kids, if both parents want to work reduced hours so they can spend more time with the kids, those are things that I think any halfway decent society would give people the option to do. But the problem is that as much as these people might lecture people morally on how those are good things, they're not only don't support, but are adamantly opposed to everything that would make it easier to do that. That they're opposed to making it easier to organize unions so we could have, the actual historical preconditions for 1950s families we were talking about earlier. They're against raising the minimum wage. They're certainly against
very anti-union.
Yeah, very anti-union. They're certainly opposed to like providing people with daycare, which if you want people to have kids, that would certainly help with that. Like they're against all of this stuff because ultimately I think it's kind of bait and switch that they like to scold people about these things. They like to fret about how the decisions of other people are supposedly stopping, or supposedly like leading to the decline of marriage, or somehow I really don't get this one. Letting gay people get married, leads to the decline of marriage. But they don't actually want to give people the tools that they would need if they actually wanted to follow their advice.
No, and they never really talk about equality, right? And Joe Rogan actually made some jokes about divorce in that show that Matt Walsh tried to push back on and had no data when Joe Rogan was talking about most marriages into divorce. After reading your piece, I went and grabbed a book I read a while back by a guy named Gregory Wilpert. Used to be on the Real News, and he was in Venezuela for 5 years during the Bolivarian Revolution and wrote what I think is a really good book about Chavez's plans, what actually came to fruition, what didn't happen. And one of the things that Chavez was trying to roll out was like true equality on a gender level. And he really felt like if you are a homemaker, you deserve a wage, because that's what true equality looks like, right? The ability not to be stuck in a relationship that you may not want to be in. which I think is interesting because, again, a lot of the talk coming from these individuals is, and everyone watching the show hates these people. I get that. But I think cats need to understand, too, these people have a massive audience. And it's not just your, uncles that you hate during the holidays.
Depressingly, I was going to say, depressingly, the numbers are very clear on this. That I think oftentimes people in our corner have a skewed sense of this. But like, just if you want to really depress yourself, go look at one of those. There's a Twitter account that just lists off what the 10 most shared stories were on Facebook the day before, and it's like always like 8 of them are always this garbage.
Yeah. But I know, MT, you have some opinions about, not opinions, but some factoids about the history of marriage, and the framing of what these two were talking about was that marriage has always been about men and women and procreation. And I know you have something to say about that.
I do. It was a great intro for something I don't have. I wanted to ask, is this about white people?
Well, I mean, look, there are plenty of there are plenty of people who will of both the racist white reactionary variety and like the black nationalist variety who will endlessly fret about racially specific versions of this for black people.
That's true.
Like that, and it's in both cases. I think the fundamental problem is the same. I mean, it's just kind of ridiculous to think that and in a way, I think actually, hot take maybe that the sort of stuff that Shapiro and Walsh are doing in some ways is in some ways a colorblind version of underclass ideology. That it's like all that it's all just people who are making bad moral choices and they need to pull their pants up, rather than say that like people are that like actual material conditions constrain what kind of lives people lead and like have some kind of causal effects in the world.
I'm all about white underclass ideology from now on.
That's a new T-shirt.
That's a new T-shirt. I mean, marriage has historically been about property. That's what I thought you were gonna talk about, MT, because you've said that before on the show. And all of a sudden, yeah, you're pretty smart.
Well, I would just say this briefly on that, like that. One thing that always strikes me as really funny when I hear like Matt Walsh, for example, talking about this stuff, is that he'll talk about how marriage has always been defined as a union of one man and one woman. It's like, okay, the dude is a very religious Catholic, and if he cracked open his Bible, he would know that is not the case. Right? That King Solomon had however many wives and etc. Right? Like that.
Etc.
Right? Well, actually, it is etc. Right? Because he had however many hundreds of wives plus however many hundreds of concubines. But yeah, that polygamy is all over the place in the Old Testament, and which is relevant, I think, actually, because it's historic relevant to the point about property. But then I think there is a sense in which marriage, there's a germ of truth to what social conservatives say about this, that marriage has changed in a fundamental way in relatively recently, historically. It just has nothing to do with letting gay people get married. The change is legal equality for women within marriage, and the end of coverture. The old legal doctrine that many of a married woman's legal rights and duties were subsumed into her husband, and I think that one, which does probably lead into one reason why there's this big contradiction at the heart of their views, that about they want people to have this sort of idealized 1950s white picket fence single provider marriages, but they won't give people the economic tools to do so. And in some cases, it's just because people are capitalist ideologues and everything else is hypocrisy. But also there is a social conservative angle on this, which is that they don't want, they don't want economic conditions that allow everybody to make whatever choices they want and condition equality. Because the same way that those conditions allow people who do want to live the way that they want them to live to do that, they also allow people who don't to do that. That like the same way that that precarious economic conditions make it hard to keep relationships together, make people hesitate about getting married or having kids, etc. Also, those same economic conditions will sometimes keep people in bad or even abusive relationships because they can't afford to strike out on their own. So I think if you're a social conservative, you sort of correctly recognize that that providing substantial social democratic reforms that would chip away at those conditions, also doesn't really serve your agenda. I mean, it serves our agenda, which should be right the message of the left. I mean, I think sometimes people get hung up on this in unhelpful ways. That there's a sort of strand of classical Marxist thought where people talk about like abolishing the family, whatever that means. But I would say that the sort of helpful left message is we want to give people the economic ability to live however the hell they want to. If they want to have, nuclear families and, even single provider nuclear families, great. We'll give you the economic ability to do that. If they want to live some other way, they could do that too. It should be up to you.
If they want to have 27 beige kids, they can do that too.
Sure, why not?
Okay, I like this left.
Yeah, no, but seriously, like, why not? Like, if you want to, I think that John Stuart Mill has this phrase about experiments in living, and I always thought when like regular bourgeois liberals talk that way, the obvious absurdity of it is like, okay, it's all very well to tell people that you're free to make experiments in living if you can figure it out financially. I mean, that's like telling some physics grad student that if they could buy their own Large Hadron Collider, they could do all the experiments they want. That doesn't do them any good. But like actually giving people a foundation of material security, so like you take that out of the equation, then yeah, look, if you want to, I don't know, if you want to live in a polyamorous Wiccan commune, go nuts. If you want to have if you want to live in a more traditional way, do that. But like I don't care. It's not even a political question to me how somebody lives their life. It's a political question how society distributes its resources, thus allowing people to live their lives that way.
How do you deal with the questions that you hear from the reactionary right that there are certain ideological strains amongst the left, some would argue, say, elements of radical feminism that fundamentally argue that marriage and family are oppressive of women, that they are trying to extract wealth and resources from women, that they're designed to objectify women as a means to legitimate the belief that the left is inherently against marriage?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that there certainly are people with views like the ones you're describing, but I don't think that really has anything to do with what a materialist left should be saying, because I think the sort of like supportable socialist feminism that I would be down with just says that you should have meaningfully, obviously a foundation of legal and civic equality, and you'd have a foundation of material equality, so women can make whatever choices they want. I mean, I saw somebody in the chat talking about that book, the Kirsten Godsey book, which gets into how relationships, for all the problems with this society, relationships in East Germany were actually much better in some ways than in West Germany, because they like greater foundation of economic equality meant that nobody was staying in bad relationships because they couldn't afford to not do that. Even the sort of few extra marks that some like professional person had in East Germany as opposed to anybody else wasn't really enough for that to happen. And so ultimately, to me, if somebody says, well, I don't. Essentially, what they're saying is, I don't approve of like women making these choices. I think it's bad for them. Look, anybody who's like a sort of moral preacher saying, I don't approve of the choices that people are making. I think it's bad for them. I think that's, my view is that that's kind of a distraction from material politics, that that what we should be doing is enabling people to make whatever choices they want, not lecturing them about what choices those are, whatever perspective we're delivering that lecture from. And ultimately, to directly answer your question, Pascal, I would say that what you say is, okay, look, is the question, are a handful of academics and writers sometimes guilty of saying silly things? Yeah, they are. But if the question is, should you support the left in the sense of supporting a political program in the real world that would involve things like higher wages and making it easier, or to organize labor unions and providing everybody with health care, providing everybody with daycare, and all of those basic reforms that would actually solve this problem they seem to care so much, they claim to care so much about, then I don't think I don't think the fact that like some rad lib academic says something ridiculous should be either here nor there in terms of like how somebody feels about that political program.
Interesting. So, I mean, I understand that, but we do understand that there is a large constellation of people who have those kind of rad lib ideas. So I think that those things will have to be fought out on the terrain of the actual left. I don't necessarily agree or disagree with you at all. What I'm saying is that we have to be prepared for that fight, because I think that's going to be part of the battle as well. Do you think that the reactionary right understands that they're basically playing a game when they make these arguments? In other words, are they actually bona fide making these arguments, or is this really a game for them to try to score political points, to try to get people to get to the idea that the left is full of morally bankrupt boogeymen, and that you want to keep your kids away from them because, God forbid, what'll happen with them if they're in your presence?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's very hard to know in many individual cases whether people really mean with these things. My default assumption is usually that people have convinced themselves of whatever nonsense they're spouting. So I think probably we're a little bit too quick to assume that everybody's a grifter, that everybody's like sort of secretly agrees with us about this stuff, but they're sort of pretending, they've like taken the money and they're pretending not to. I think that if anything, it's probably psychologically easier for most people who say these things to convince themselves of it. In some cases, I think they're just not very thoughtful people, which is not to say that there aren't genuine examples. I mean, I think like, an extreme case of somebody I think actually is probably a grifter is like Milo Yiannopoulos, who was actually a married gay man who was like a very Trumpy, extreme right-wing married gay man, and then after he was canceled by the right for his age of consent comments, he claimed to have found Jesus, and he said that he admitted to still. There's an interview I saw with him where he admitted that he was still living with his husband, but claimed that they were just roommates now. So like that guy's a grifter. He's pretending. That I feel confident in. Matt Walsh, might be a true believer. But I think that in some sense it matters a little bit less what's in people's hearts. Like, how sincerely do they believe what they're spouting? I think that matters less ultimately than what interests are served by what they're spouting.
Are they true believers, or we're reading a book for our Saturday show? Todd McGowan just wrote this is the first release in Sublation about happiness and joy. I don't know how deep Toussaint or Pascal have gotten into the book. And one of the things that McGowan points out is that conservatives need to feel joy, a boogeyman. They can't exist without one, an enemy, if you will. So is it kind of constantly finding these culture battles to fight? Because I wouldn't even say secretly. It seems like off camera is where the real political fuckery is going on.
Well, I mean, my ultimate answer is actually, so I see our friend C. Derek Vard said in the chat, basically a
listen
very
to Ben
succinct.
staying at a ghetto ass hotel.
It's actually not me yet. But I mean, I'm not staying at a fancy hotel. This is a Red Roof Inn. That's actually not me.
That wasn't you?
No, that actually wasn't me.
Sorry.
But what Vard said in the chat, I think, is exactly right, which is just doesn't matter. I don't think it does matter very much, like whether like people like Matt Walsh or Ben Shapiro or Jordan Peterson believe what they say or not. And one reason it doesn't matter is because whether or not they truly believe these things, a lot of other people do, because they have giant audiences and they do, trust me that like it's not like the vast majority of grassroots conservatives are only pretending, they like in some ways life would be easier or so. But like they do actually believe these things. These people do have a lot of influence. But I guess to kind of take it back to the original point, and kind of that first question that Pascal asked to kick us off about political economy, I would just say that I actually think that there are people who might be influenced by some of these messages who are not unreachable with a better program, right? So like a story that I've told before, so I'll just do this the really quick version now, is shortly after I went on Rogan at the beginning of the year, I was at a bar in Atlanta. There was a dude there who recognized me for the show who described himself as a conservative. He said that he, even though I worked for what he called a liberal magazine, and I let it go, he meant Jack, that he still seemed like somebody you could talk to, whatever. And so we started talking.
You still seem like a nice guy.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
the person.
Yeah, you felt like being black for a second, huh? Oh, you're really cool for a black guy. Oh, you're all right for a black guy.
Yeah. So he found me as one of the good ones. So we had a conversation, and in that conversation, the only really conservative view that he even expressed was that he was uncomfortable with abortion, and which many people are.
He was uncomfortable.
That's yeah.
Look, we don't like that. I don't like that, right? But I think we do have to admit that there is like a huge percentage of the population, male and female, that does have that view. That is like has some level of, I don't remember what phrase he used to describe it, but like has some level of moral antipathy or discomfort about abortion. Not a majority, fortunately, which makes things easier politically, but a big chunk of the population. But what I pressed him on in that conversation was, okay, but like, what do you actually want to do? Do you want to like put people in jail? Like do you think that like women who have abortion should go to prison? And when it's put, and this is not an uncommon experience, I think, when it's put in those terms, it's like, no, I guess not. And we talked about it for a few minutes, and ultimately, what I said to him, and he agreed, is okay. Look, you want fewer people to have abortions, fine. You could just give more financial support to people so they feel like they could afford to have kids if they wanted them, and there would be fewer abortions than there are right now. Wouldn't that be better than putting people in prison? And it's like, yeah, I guess, like that's so I, the point, this is my uncharitable summary of what he said, but like, but he did end up going along with that. And I think that's, I think lots of people have all kinds of weird combinations of views. Like that, you're actually kind of a weirdo if you spend enough time thinking about politics that like everything you think is like well thought out and consistent. Like very few people are like that. And that can be discouraging sometimes, but the encouraging thing about it is that actually means that even with people who might have some views we really don't like, there is something to work with here, which is why, both of these articles, I didn't just want to do the sort of like, okay, I'm going to write about Jordan Peterson. Here's why Jordan Peterson is a very bad man who has all kinds of horrible views I don't like, because he has reactionary and bigoted views, etc. All of which might be true, but I kind of feel like people say that so often it didn't really need to be said again by me.
Yeah.
And what did feel like a more useful contribution to me is just to point out, because I think we should all be doing more of this, that like, okay, Jordan Peterson says, like he regularly moves himself to tears talking about these like alienated, confused young men who come to him for advice and feel lost and all this stuff. And it's like easy to make fun of certain aspects of that, but he's not wrong that there are a lot of young dudes who do feel exactly the way that he describes. And there are a lot of reasons for that, you know.
I'm 45 and I feel like that.
Fair.
Actually, that actually goes right into the next question I wanted to ask you. Is that how does we've probably had 5 episodes talking about this, and I'm sure we'll bring it up again. We probably will talk about it with Crispin on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
How does the crisis of masculinity discourse that's so prevalent today, on the left and on the right, but particularly on the right, how does that work into questions about family, the role of men in family, the role of masculinity, and how do we avoid encouraging the materialist economic justification for family with a left socialist vision without falling into a reactionary role modeling of what the proper man, father, or husband should be that the right seems to be advocating in their paradigm?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a big question. I guess I'd just say a couple things that don't completely answer, but maybe answer parts of it. And you know, I thought your occasional Alabaster co-host Kuba said some stories about this on Twitter like last week, I think.
Ooh, that was a good. Yeah, that thread was great.
And he talked about the way that sense of a crisis of masculinity that you're talking about, this, you know, sort of which has a lot of causes, but certainly involves things like people not feeling they're on the path that they should be on in life, that are informed by a certain ideal about, you know, how, you know, men should live, about, you know, starting families and, you know, being able to provide for people, and et cetera, that have to do with this lack of a sense of mentors. Some of this is just the sort of gender-specific fallout of, you know, a pretty obvious phenomenon about American society, which is that we're incredibly atomized, and like to the point that, I mean, for, you know, even friendship is kind of a crisis in American society right now. If you look at the number of hours a week that people spend with friends compared to like even a few years ago, and definitely compared to like 20 years ago, it's just plummeted because we live in this absolute, you know, I mean, look, this is, I mean, when was that Bowling Alone book put out? That was decades ago, right? It's gotten way worse since then, right? So it's like, and I think that this is part of what Pascal's talking about is a consequence of this, but what Kuba was identified in that thread has to do with the way that a sort of that people feeling like they don't have, like young men feeling like they don't have mentors, creates an opening for people like Jordan Peterson, who are all too happy to come in and fulfill that role. It creates an opening for much darker forces than that to come in. He talked about the alt-right in that thread, and how it is that the left can usefully intervene in that is a big question, but I think he did say a few things that made sense. And one of them is that the last thing you want to do is contribute to the way that all of these other forces want to portray the left, which is sort of a bunch of, you know, a bunch of really tedious scolds, you know, that I think he said sort of, you know, like a, you know, 21st century version of the old SNL church lady skit, you know, but for social justice. And you know, and I think that's right. I mean, I think you do have to present something that's appealing, something that, you know, that people actually want to be part of, where they're not going to feel particularly judged, etc. And most importantly, I think that's linked to some kind of positive, hopeful vision. And as far and I understand the part of Pascal's question about not wanting to feed into sort of reactionary gender stereotypes. That's certainly correct, but I think that again, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm just being way too much of a vulgar Marxist about this, but I think that a lot of that stuff sorts itself out under conditions of meaningful economic equality, when nobody's like, when nobody's like staying in a bad relationship because she can't afford to move out, for example, when people have like meaningful options, people can see each other exercising better options. I think there's a lot of evidence. I mean, even without completely overcoming capitalism, I think there's a lot of evidence that like the Nordic countries, for example, do actually have a degree of gender equality in many ways that's probably higher than almost anywhere else in the world. That like addressing some of these questions about political economy actually does address a lot of that. I think that people I think people can kind of figure out how they want to relate to each other when you take out, the sort of legal inequality that you had in the 50s, but you also take out conditions of economic inequality and material scarcity. I mean, I don't think people need to be lectured about that. I think that they'll, figure out between themselves arrangements that, that work for them. I think that the most important thing for me is just that, like, when people think about the left, they don't think about people who I'm thinking about that old Michael Brooks lecture at the Lafayette College thing, the Mill series, where he's like making fun of people who say Seinfeld is problematic, everything you like is bad, they don't associate us with that. They associate us with, hey, you should have health care and get paid more money, and your boss should be forced to like let you have some paid time off. Mm-hmm. And here's a vision of a better society that you actually want to live in, and here's a group of people who aren't just going to like sort of engage in these like weird esoteric theoretical interventions, and they're not going to lecture people about how they live their lives, but we're going to say like, we're in this together, and we're going to like work on this together to try to achieve some of these things.
Thank you very much for coming on, Ben Burgess. Are you going to be joining us for a little bit in the champagne room?
I will. Actually, that's a good reminder. I will send. I had the setup right now, but I didn't send it. I posted right now to the GTA Patreon for anybody who wants to join there.
Oh, damn. Should we do calls in the champagne room?
If you want to do calls, I'm down, but I'm happy to go with the flow. I'm just chilling in my lovely Red Roof Inn in Odessa, Texas.
You put the call out. Red Roof Inn, Odessa, Texas. I got a bottle.
Go door to door,
I love scotch. Scotch. Pascal, are you ready to go in the champagne room? Should we take calls for a little bit?
We can take calls.
Are you saying that like an oppressed wife when the husband's like, we're going to entertain my mother this evening?
As long as he doesn't have to dance, he doesn't care.
Dance a little magic. Pascal, do the dance all the young people do, Pascal. So we're going to go take calls in the champagne room. This should be fun because this will be give them an argument, and this is Revolution Callers. We're going to have a call off. Like the Jim Rome show, and the callers have to talk shit about each other.
Nice.
No, just kidding. That's not what's going to happen at all. Because I would win that fight. All right. Are we ready to go, Toussaint?
I think so.
Do you have any parting words?
We've exhausted the possibilities for this hour. Let's move on to the champagne room. We can at least pretend to be inebriated and uninhibited.
I think Ben might have a bottle.
You'll find out at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not giving that away here.
If he did, he wouldn't let you know.
What's that?
There you go.
Said if he did, he wouldn't let you know anyway.
Well, we'll join you guys in the patron half. If you're watching this on Ben Burgess' show, there should be a link ready for you to go to check us out. Give us like 10 minutes or so for the This Is Revolution people. If you're not a part, if you want to be a part, it's easy. Patreon.com/Bitter Lake Presents. And you can enjoy the show.
I'm sorry. You're not supposed to interrupt men because their minds are like one track. And it really disrupts them when you just throw in a monkey wrench. I'm sorry, person of masculinity. I just wanted to say that Ben has been on this show before, in case people don't realize it. And there was a little bit of nerd jousting with Pascal and Ben. Pascal kind of went after Burgess. And in the end, Pascal said it was one of TIR's best episodes.
There you go.
There you go.
Yes.
Jinx.
It's a mischaracterization.
A little bit of nerd jousting.
We'll correct your characterization of that episode in post game.
I do want to put a shout out. I was in a horrible mood today, and M. Toussaint said one thing to me, and it totally changed everything. So I want to thank you for that.
You're welcome, Jason.
Because I was
saying monkey balls.
No.
Can I can tell you, I will tell you what I said. I said something that he said back to him. And it made his day. He was so tickled.
I didn't think I said it. I was like, there's no way in the world I said that.
He definitely said it twice. Said it twice.
Were we in real life when I said it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's why I don't remember. Okay.
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Oh, fuck. That was okay. On that note.
So I should also say it is December. Should we let an episode of any of the shows go by without mentioning January?
I've been trying to mention it every time, and I think I forgot because I'm an idiot. January 22nd in the Cutting Room in New York. Ben, myself, David Griscom, Matt Leck, Sam Cedar, Emma Vigeland, Bosch Carson-Carr, Deep State Cuba, allegedly Gene Bajlan, allegedly M. Toussaint.
Jake Abbott should be there for all the Abbott heads out there.
Will Pascal Robert be there?
That's
Is he there already?
Is he in fact on this episode from like the back of the cutting room?
Exactly.
Sort of early Terminator Pascal. And he's warning other Pascals about the coming of more Pascals. I'm really excited for the show. Wherever you're listening to the show or watching the show, there are links in the description where you can get tickets to the Left is Best Give Them a Revolution live show January 22nd at the Cutting Room in New York City. We are bringing the show to New York. Did I leave anything out, Ben?
No, I think that's about it. It should be really fun. The one that we did in LA was fantastic. I think this is going to be even better for a variety of reasons. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
I'm excited. Actually, some friends from high school hit me up on social media because I posted the thing, and they're like, "You're going to be in New York. We live here. We'll come get you from the airport. You can stay with us. It'll be fucking rad. We haven't seen you in forever." So I'm excited. It's gonna be
very nice of Andy Williams to open his doors for us.
Andy Williams, you know, having Andy Williams back in the chat is like that scene for me in The Color Purple at the end where Oprah Winfrey gets out of prison. It's like, Miss Sophia, home now. Whenever I see Andy William in the comments,
Oh,
that's how I
man. Oh my God.
So when I
So
see
what?
Andy in New York, he's gonna remind me of that.
All right.
Okay. Now, since do you want to say goodbye, MT?
I want you to say goodbye, and then I'm gonna mess it up, and then you're gonna say it correctly.
Negress. Thank you everyone for hanging out with us. If you haven't done it, please hit like, please hit subscribe. Go to Give Them an Argument. Go like that as well. It helps Left Media. We are
Left.
damn it.